Good morning. It's Friday, I think, isn't it? How you all doing? My name's Electric Johnny Hats. Just going to talk more about big tech, because that's my favourite subject. I love big tech. Like watching all the new technology going on around us as it evolves. And it's certainly evolving, isn't it? It seems there's many people listening to Randall Carlson about the plasmoids. Seems all the big tech guys out there on YouTube picked up on that. I know I knew they would. It can't just be me that's looking out for this stuff. There's many people out there looking for this stuff, and it's all big tech. And what really is big tech? How is it going forward on big tech? What are they doing? Well, big tech, like I always mention, like I've done for the last couple of years, big tech is all down to nature. Everything's done for a natural law basis, and everything you see now, it's probably took them a while to get there. I mean, they started using the stuff in the 20s and then mastering it in the sort of the 50s, 40s for the Germans, or the Nazis rather, where they're all realising that if they want to use big tech properly, that they have to work on natural law. Everything has to work on natural law. It's not just a chemistry-based thing. I think the most cleanest energy you're ever going to find, and to do with tech and big tech and the way big tech is going, is to go back to nature. Everything goes back to nature. It's natural law. As long as we stick with natural law, i.e. insects and stuff like that, for the magnetic field, for dielectricity, because everything that flies is dielectric. It pushes down on the magnetic field. It's dielectricity. So everything goes back to nature. Everything. And I talked about last year about the Germans and how they learned how to use the magnetic field. They worked out, they worked out how to use insects and go by the natural law of insects, and now they can use, and how the insects use the magnetic field naturally, because it's a natural law basis. So that's exactly what they've done. They follow the natural law. So even people that talk about stuff that's being patented, and I did last year about everything that's patented, you can't patent natural law. But now there's all this crap going up in the air saying about, yeah, not everything's patented. Not everything's patented out there. So they've all basically just been following up on Randall Carlson. Of course. Because Randall Carlson was talking about plasmoids and plasma, and the bottom line of what he was getting to was that we've learned how to use the magnetic field, we've learned how to reverse the magnetic field, we've back-engineered everything out there, like insects and birds that do use the magnetic field naturally, and we've learned how to do that as well now. A long time ago, 50s, mastered it in the 50s, the Germans, the Nazis, they mastered it in the 50s, it was being tested out in the 20s. Yes, that far back. But now they said they realised that they know they have to use the magnetic field. We have a magnetic field, and if we can learn how to manipulate the magnetic field, then we can levitate. So simple. Remember, magic is magnetism. That's all it is, it's magnetism. You're learning how to repel the two magnets. So you're basically relearning, this is obviously on the micro, but on the macro size of this Earth, we learn how to reverse the magnetic field to our advantage. And that's exactly what people are doing. Going back from the magic carpet ride a long, long time ago, around the Middle East, it was never literally a magic carpet, remember that. It was a vehicle that was reversing the magnetic field. Like the Vanars. Is it the Vanars? The Indian things. Not teeth. But all these things, it's just learning how to reverse the magnetic field. The Germans mastered it. The Nazis, they mastered it. And that technology was carried on. They took that technology over to Antarctica and they used it over there because it was out of the way of prying eyes. But this is where it's all come from. It's all of the reversing of the magnetic field. So everybody's jumped on the Randall Carlson thing, of course. And I've been listening to David Z recently, but I started listening to David Z a couple of years ago when I got into Down Winter, because David Z is a regular on Dan Winter's show, podcast. And we all know Dan Winter's an electrical engineer and works on plasma. And actually built his own, they actually built their own machine of plasma for healing. Yeah. So I've been listening to David Z. David Z just made it onto, I think he's been on there before as well, onto Tinfoil Hat. He got on there as well. Been listening to him today. He's just basically repeating everything that we already know. The people that are into physics that know about this kind of stuff anyway. So David Z's just repeating it. Trying to make it more worldwide sort of thing, you know. And you've got the crazy guy Nick Hinton, who's been allowed to carry on with this kind of research. Remember, if you go along with their kind of research to do with this kind of thing, and not what I'm talking about right now, because they're still trying to keep this sort of under the table, under the radar, so to speak. But the people like Nick Hinton, they've been using for years, and they've allowed him to grow because he's following their narrative of the alien and UFO thing. So Nick Hinton has been allowed to do that. I say David said he's a bit more of a, he's a bit more sensible, a lot more sensible rather than the Nick Hintons out there. The Nick Hintons out there, I mean, yeah, I don't follow these people. I've watched a couple of things that he's done, but I know what it's all about. He's just something that's going along with the alien agenda, and that's why he's allowed to push it, and that's the way he's allowed to have his channels growing, because nobody else is allowed to. Anybody that goes against it, that narrative, then they just get shut down, closed down. So yeah, David said he's more of definitely more into the physics side of thing. He's still a young guy, but he's smart. He is smart, and he's just basically letting us all know about the magnetic field. And that goes for everybody else out there that do talk about this kind of thing that's based on the magnetic field. They did it in the 20s. They started testing on it in the 20s, and it's got mastered by the Nazis in the 40s. Because there was so much going on in the 40s to the 50s, or from the 20s to the 50s, there was a lot going on. And of course, once they found out what was really going on, then they bang on to the put down when they're satisfied to get everybody signed up to the Antarctic Treaty to keep everybody away from there, basically. Do you know what I mean? But we all know what's under there anyway. It's just a secret civilization that's under the ice. Putin already said that he's going to threaten the Americans with it, the American government with that, to let everybody know about the secret civilization that's under the ice in Antarctica. They show it down to global warming. But what they're doing over there is melting the ice. They're melting the ice over there. And then they can try and blame it on us for global warming. Oh, the ice is melting. Yeah, you're melting it because you need to get under to find the civilizations that's underneath in Antarctica. That's what they've been doing there. It's obvious. And then they blame it on us for global warming. When they're the ones who are actually melting the ice. Remember around Antarctica you've got Greenland, which is just, it's got a 300, I think it's a 300 mile ice wall there, but it doesn't go all the way around the Earth. It's just part of Greenland. And they're melting Greenland too. They're melting everything. And blaming it on us. But no, it's all to do with big tech. So the more that they found of past civilizations that are actually using the magnetic field, or they used to use the magnetic field, so we are basically just relearning this stuff now. Us, the public. Or the people that's been into this kind of tech, it's big tech, you know. And I've talked before about all these other guys, you know, like, I do like Randall Carson. I've always said I like Randall Carson. Still on the fence, always been on the fence with Mr. Hancock, Graham Hancock, because he seems to be being allowed to push his agenda now. It's quite funny, isn't it? They all seem to be allowed to push their agenda right now because it's the right time to push these kind of agendas, you know. Everybody's talking about this secret civilization, which were Tartaria, but we have no proof it was Tartaria. It's something completely different. It's another civilization that's probably been on this land a long, long time, i.e. Antarctica under the ice. Every world leader goes there, every black pope for the black nobility will go over there. Even famous stars are allowed to go over there to see this new civilization that's under the ice. But, you know, whether Putin will, it's just a threat, obviously. But, you know, because they know that we are smart, you know, the people that do these kind of research into these things. They know that we are on a very good path, and this is why we get shadow banned, and this is why we get our mouths closed, because they don't want it. So delete your videos and stuff like that, and put your videos somewhere completely different so it doesn't get a big audience, obviously, you know. So, but it's all big tech, and I will continue to follow this, you know, from, like I said, with Randall Carson talking about the use of the magnetic field, and they're even getting help now from plasmoids for the high energy based, like Tesla did as well, where Tesla we know was messing around all the time with plasma and plasmoids, and we have the pictures and captions. Unfortunately, that's all we do have, but you can see him messing around with the plasmoids, and this is what they're doing now. They realise on a natural law basis, because plasmoids is plasma in the atmosphere. It's just high energy that's in our atmosphere. It's the intelligence of the atmosphere. So they've now learned how to grab hold of these plasmoids through frequencies and move them around using frequencies, and then using the high power energy of the plasmoids for their kind of technology and high tech. But the bottom line was, it's just giving everybody a better indication of the magnetic field. The past civilizations were all moving around in vehicles up in the air, in the atmosphere, high-powered, intelligent vehicles that they were using, and all they were just the reversing of the magnetic field. They know how to use it. They knew how to use it, and as we see now, we see a lot of plasma moving around, but we also see a lot of high drones and stuff like that are being used on the magnetic field, or used to reverse the magnetic fields, and that's what we see up there all the time. But not to be confused with plasma and plasmoids, because the drones are used by the military-industrial complex, and the plasmoids are just the plasmoids, which are just the natural law that's in the atmosphere, which they are using now. You know, it's all big tech. But just remember, it all comes down to magnetism, because magic is magnetism. And magnetism is dielectricity, which is the same as one in the same thing. But you all know that anyway, right? You all know that anyway. So yeah, I'm just going to keep obviously carrying on with big tech, because it's my favourite subject. I absolutely love it. Yeah, it's all about the magnetic field, and they're making it, they're pushing it out sort of world spread for people. You know, maybe to get rid of some of the annoying UFOologists out there that just continuously lie. Maybe it's for that reason, you know, or maybe they just want to push everybody to know about the magnetic field and the reversing of the magnetic field. Maybe it's that. But it's all natural law. Everything's natural law. I do recommend following David Z. The only reason I say that is because I followed him for a while through Dan Winter, and I do like Dan Winter. He's a great electrical engineer, and he's great with plasma. Absolutely, and he's built his own machines regarding on plasmas as well. Nick Hintons, maybe you want to stay clear of them. I think that's mainly for the deep ufologists out there that just go off into crazy world, into crazy lands. Then you can follow Nick Hinton. He will give you the crazy stories that you're probably, I don't know, thriving or expecting. My advice: stay away from these kind of guys, but stick with David Z, because he's talking a lot more sensible with the magnetic field. And of course, Dan Winter is one of my favourites, like Eric Dollard for electrical engineering, that talk basically on natural law. Everything's natural law, and this is why Eric Dollard messed around in the past with plasma, and still does to this day, because he knows that plasma is the intelligence of us. He knows that it's the higher intelligence of the atmosphere, which is the consciousness that's everything that's all around us. And even though I'm not a theologian or nothing like that, I do like parts of it. But my advice, you can follow the David Zeds and the Dan Winters, the electrical engineers, the Eric Dollards, these kind of people, and even some to do with the electric universe as well, that you all know about, which is still running on YouTube, which still gets a bad rap, when all they have ever done is talked about the electric universe and everything being electric. There's no fusion in the sun. We all know that by now. It's a converter. It's a converter of light and energy through plasma and hydrogen and carbon and mercury and all different elements that are up there in the help, that are dragged through, all elements that are dragged into the moon, because the moon is the magnetic collector, and then it's passed over into the sun to give us all power. natural law tech. Thank you very much. My name's Electric Johnny Hat. Just wanted to do a little talk about big tech again, because big tech is my favourite. And just hopefully you're all following how things are working through the magnetic field, and how they're talking about it quite openly now about the magnetic field. I'm not talking about mainstream. I'm not talking about mainstream here, because we won't get nothing from mainstream. But if you do your own research and follow the big tech, follow the dielectricity, follow the magnetism, and you will get absolutely everywhere. You will find everything out you need to find out. But if you stick with these ridiculous ufologists like Nick Hinton, you won't get anywhere. Thank you very much.